be a Zen Buddhist. And what's the point of this ceremony, and why even go through it? Isn't this just some ancient tradition that would be better done away with in this modern day? And does it matter if you have labels like Zen Buddhist or Unitarian Universalist or anything? How important are these labels? Why do we have to identify ourselves as something? And that's certainly a fair question to ask. After all, isn't it enough to simply be human, part of the human race? I remember a long time ago when we had first gone to Germany, we were staying in a German hotel just waiting to be able to get into our house on base, and the other American family that was there also PCSing in. That's permanent change of station when you move to a new location. He was the chaplain. And this was just a couple years after I had left Christianity, and he said, "So Doug, what are you?" And I said, "I'm just this guy." And isn't that enough? I'm just a human. Some people are very uncomfortable with this whole labeling thing. So I want to talk about that first. Because as I said, in one sense, labels are utterly meaningless. But in another, we use labels all the time to navigate this world. And without them, without names, without identifying things, even though that can sometimes have negative consequences, it's also how we get through this world. And so being a Buddhist does have meaning, although I will admit in 2018 in the United States, what that meaning is pretty foggy to the vast majority of people. You say Buddhist and all sorts of different images come to mind, and they can be wildly different and contradictory from each other. So let's look at that first. Since we're going to go with this label Buddhist, what is it? Personally, I think what it is to be a Buddhist is ideally summed up in something called the Bodhisattva vows. This is a simple 4-line chant that we do at the end of all of our Buddhist services on Wednesday nights. I'll share it with you now. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to realize it. Or instead, some people think realize means come to an understanding of. This is realize as in to make it real, to make it manifest. And that first line is particularly important. Beings are numberless, I vow to free them. I vow to free them all. It's not some of us get it and the rest of you don't. I'll come back to that in a little bit. Now the Bodhisattva vow, you wonder, well, what is a Bodhisattva? A Bodhisattva is, in the particular form of Buddhism we practice, Zen Buddhism, it means a follower of the way. It also has a far more colorful and interesting definition, and that is of a mythical person who, after many lifetimes, has achieved full enlightenment and could break free of the bonds of samsara, which is the world we live in, the world filled with dukkha, or often translated suffering or discontent. And by breaking free of this cycle of birth, life, suffering, death, rebirth, these beings, through enlightenment, can break this cycle and move on. And yet, they say, no, I'm not leaving this cycle because everyone isn't leaving this cycle yet. There's others still to hear the truth. I'm coming back. That's what a bodhisattva is. They pretty much come across as demigods or super powerful mythological beings. There's all sorts of wild, fanciful stories about them. But the bottom line underneath all of this mythology, and some people do take it as literal truth, but most view it as metaphor or mythological stories with lessons, the bottom line is that it's driven by compassion. It's driven by the fact that the world is filled with suffering, and the Buddhist hope, the Buddhist goal, the Buddhist vow is to end this suffering, all suffering, until everyone can break free. No one is left behind. Underline that, bold it. No one is left behind. Bodhisattvas aren't content to say, well, I get to go to heaven. Sorry about the others who don't. A Bodhisattva says, no, we all go together. Much like the Universalists from the Unitarian Universalist tradition who said, no one goes to hell. That makes no sense. It's the same thing. We're all in this together and we all go together. So that's the goal of the Bodhisattva. That's the goal of the Buddhist. It emphasizes understanding why we suffer, how we bring suffering upon ourselves, how we break free of the delusions in our lives that cause our suffering, and then we seek to help others to break free of their delusions and their suffering also. So I'll quote first Shohaku Akamura, a Zen priest. He talks about this vow and says, the vow has two aspects, becoming a Buddha and helping all beings to become a Buddha. And a Buddha just means someone who's woken up, who's broken free of delusions. These two cannot be separated. We vow to become Buddhas together with all beings. That is, we vow not to become a Buddha until all beings, all people, become Buddhas. We vow to stay in samsara, our current world of suffering, on purpose to walk with all beings. This explains why Zen master Gaishan Lingmiao said he would be reborn as a water buffalo. For the water buffalo, which walks in muddy waters to help farmers grow rice, symbolizes bodhisattva practice. The bodhisattva vow is an essential point in Mahayana teachings and practice. And Mahayana is Northern Buddhism, including Zen Buddhism. It is the essential point. So those who find this path important, those who want to lead a life that follows this path, might want to identify with this outwardly through ceremony, letting the world know and cementing it within their own mind also. And so the Jukai ceremony is important if it is important to the individual who participates. And this is what I told everyone in our group. Don't do this unless it's important to you. If it has no meaning to you, don't do it because you think you're supposed to. Only do it if it speaks to your heart and to who you are. So now we're going to talk a little bit about these precepts that I keep mentioning. Why receive the precepts? And I'll tell you what they are in a minute. But first I'm going to quote another Zen priest, Daishin Morgan. To begin with, we need the precepts as a guide for our behavior in an external sense, so that we can find our way through the confusion that prevents our seeing Buddha nature clearly. As long as we continue to cause harm to ourselves and others, our vision will be clouded and distorted. The precepts are a framework within which we can begin to develop the insight that allows us to see the source of true wisdom. The purpose of the precepts is to guide us beyond their form in a legalistic sense to the spirit that lies beyond their form in a legalistic sense, to the spirit that lies behind them. We can never know this spirit without keeping the precepts. So we want to move beyond the legalistic sense of understanding these things. You know, like take the 10 Commandments, for instance. That is a legal set of rules that you must follow. The precepts are not a legal sense of rules. The precepts are given to you and you receive them in order that you can break free of delusion, see why you cause your own suffering, how you can develop wisdom. All these precepts are to help you develop wisdom, become more compassionate, and help others. They're not because there's a God up there judging you, or a bodhisattva up there judging you, or Buddha up there judging you. These are to help you live the lifestyle you say you seek to live. So what are these precepts? And these you will see if you come this afternoon. These are the precepts that are asked of each participant. First of all, there are the 3 refuges. The 3 things you take refuge in. Buddha, and that's not the historical Buddha, that is the concept of Buddha, of being one who can wake up. That you can wake up, that you can become enlightened. You take refuge in Dharma, the teachings. And you take refuge in Sangha, the group. So as a Buddhist, you are going to take refuge in or find strength from three things. The concept that I can wake up, that I can see clearly, that there are teachings that are valuable and helpful, the Dharma, and that I can do this with the help of my friends, the Sangha. Then there are the three pure precepts. Cease from evil, do only good, and do good for others, specifically to save all beings. And that's right from the Bodhisattva vow, to save all living beings. That's pretty simple. Hardly anyone would complain about that. Cease from evil, do only good, and do good for others. Then you come to the 10 grave precepts. Only 5 of them are used in the ceremony this afternoon. This is the lay initiation for people at the first level, if you will. They become initiates. So those first 5 of the 10 grave precepts are: do not kill, affirm life. Do not steal, or do not take what is not freely given. Do not lie, or manifest truth. Do not engage in sexual misconduct, or honor the body. Do not cloud the mind with intoxicants. Proceed clearly. So those are the 5 that will happen today. And then, if one moves on further and takes the last 5 precepts, these are: do not slander, be humble, give generously, avoid anger, and do not defame the 3 treasures. The 3 treasures are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Do not defame Buddhism. Now, a lot of these sound very similar to many different legal codes from religion. Certainly some of them are straight out of the 10 Commandments, except these predate the 10 Commandments, depending on who you talk to. We don't really know exactly, but they're certainly close. In any case, it's not just Buddhism and Judaism that have these sorts of things. These are pretty much universal throughout all religions. Some of these, like do not kill, do not steal, do not lie. But as I said, these are not rules handed down by a deity. These are precepts, these are principles, these are ways of living handed down based on experience of teachers throughout thousands of years, saying, if you seek to live this path, this is what's going to help you to do it. And no one's sitting around judging you. No one's taking notes on how many of these you break, because we break them all the time. But you've received these precepts. You've received them in an understanding that this helps me to wake up. This helps me to be more compassionate. This helps me to help others overcome their suffering. Once they have received their precepts, the participants will be given a couple of things. First of all, they'll get a wagisa. And this is a wagisa, or wagisa, depending on who's saying it and how they pronounce it. This is something that's worn. You wear this whenever you're at a Zen ceremony. If you go on Wednesday nights, I always wear mine. You can wear them every day when you do zazen or meditation. Now these have 2 different symbols on them. And you're going to see on one side there's a plant with 3 leaves, and on the other a flower with 5 leaves. And these are interspaced throughout, and on the top they're put together into a single logo. These represent the 2 temples in Japan, because what we practice is a Japanese form of Buddhism. The 2 main temples of Soto Zen Buddhism, Aihiji and Sojiji. Aihiji was founded way back in 1244 by Zen Master Dogen, who is the founder of Soto Zen Buddhism. And then the other one is the other main temple, not quite as old. So the history of this strange piece of material is lost for the most part, but the most likely story, based on what I've been able to research, is Zen Buddhism, which traces its roots back to China, underwent a lot of persecution in China at one point, and the Zen monks and nuns were not allowed to wear their robes. And so this became a replacement to symbolize the robe that you could wear underneath your clothing. And it's still a reminder that you're a nun or a monk, even if you can't do it outwardly anymore. And today it's used by various Zen groups as a symbol also, because technically, when you go through the ceremony today, you become a lay monk or a lay nun. And so we're following in that long tradition. Some people are uncomfortable. They say, that's a Japanese thing. Why are we doing it? Well, no one has to do it. But it does tie you in to a very long and ancient tradition that's been practiced. And at least I, for one, enjoy that knowledge that this isn't just something we made up 10 years ago. This is something that's been around for a long, long time and thought about deeply by many, many people. The other thing that you're going to get is a Dharma name. As I said, Dharma means the teaching. So you will be given a new name as though you were a monk or a nun. I got one a few years ago, Fujin. I don't really use it much. And some people, again, find this almost uncomfortable or silly. It's like, why are we getting this Japanese name? And so, did a little research on that. Why do we do this? And by the way, the name doesn't have to be Japanese. It's just a new name. In our tradition, it's Japanese, but it could be anything. They could have made my Dharma name Bill, and that could have been it. Named after great, great people, right, Bill? So I looked it up. I found my favorite passage to explain some of this and why this does have some importance, and not just another tradition we carry along, is from yet another Zen priest, Koan Franz. It's not that you get a new name, it's that the rug is pulled out from your old one. Nothing has been replaced, only lost. A name is a powerful thing. If your name is Susan, you've probably always been Susan. That name is one of the first words you heard, one of the first words you learned to identify with as a signifier. You likely cannot imagine not being Susan. You know where Susan went to high school, who her best friends were, what she likes and what she avoids. You know Susan's favorite color. You know how she walks, what flavor ice cream she always chooses. There's a good chance you know what Susan wants. But if Susan is given the name Daiji, and if she uses it, suddenly there's a disconnect. It's jarring to be called by another name, especially when that name is attached to a particular practice, a specific way of being. Susan might always get mint chocolate chip, but Daiji doesn't know what to order. Daiji and Susan are not really from the same place. They have a shared history, but Daiji's is very short, very fresh in comparison. In fact, some priests celebrate their ordination day as their birthday. By that system, I'm a much younger man with a much broader future. Daiji is all possibility. Specifically, Susan does not know how to live the precepts, how to fulfill vow. But that's okay, because Daiji is the one who took on that responsibility, who was entrusted with saving all beings and cutting through all delusion. Daiji, if we're lucky, might just see a way. So, I don't know if that makes sense or if that helps, but I thought that was a nice way to describe it. Participants, by the way, do not know in advance what their Dharma names will be, so they will get those during the ceremony, and if you want to see them find out what their Dharma name is, you'll be there when it happens if you come. And then in the back, all the participants will get a little booklet like this, which has the entire ceremony in it, and then in the back, you have a certificate, and this is the one I got when I did this. It has your Dharma name, Fujin, which means not reaching the limit. There's also a stamp here. This official stamp means you are officially in the records as a Zen Buddhist, and that is recorded nationally and also in Japan. The lineage of the person who gives you this Dharma name and who ordains you has to be traced all the way back, allegedly, to the Buddha. Now, no one really thinks we have that kind of accurate lineage, but it is actually recorded all the way back to the Buddha. And so, The abbot of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center, Elliston Roshi, who is a Zen priest of a high order and does have the lineage going all the way back, he will be the officiant who ties you now into this lineage. So it's kind of neat to think that the person allegedly has a lineage going all the way back to the Buddha who's doing your ceremony today. And finally, I will close by saying, I've tried in half an hour to sum up something that I could spend years literally talking about, but it's a brief overview of what it is we're doing this afternoon. And I thought it was pretty nice that it worked out that I was able to come in and give you this rather than having you just show up and have no idea what's going on. Because there's not going to be a lot of explanation, you're just going to watch the ceremony. Our Zen group has been meeting here at this church for 3.5 years. And for the first 2 years, we were pretty much stuck at 6 people or less. And visitors might show up for a couple weeks and then they didn't come back. And as long as we were at 6 or even 5 or even 4, I'd come out and set up every week, but I never really anticipated a lot of growth. But in the last 6 months, people have started showing interest. And for the last 2 months, we've been in double digits, at least 10 people showing up. I think we may have hit 14 one night. That may not sound like a lot, but for a Zen group, that's a lot. I mean, Nashville doesn't get 14 people on a night. So it's really actually quite mind-blowing when that many people show up. That people want to come out in a little town in southern Tennessee and practice a tradition from another country halfway around the world, seeking to wake up, seeking to put an end to suffering, seeking to understand these teachings that are pretty foreign to us. It's very uplifting to me. And we do have room for more. If you want to come out on a Wednesday night, I'll meet with you 15 minutes early and run you through what happens in a ceremony so you don't have to worry about being confused or lost about what's going on. And in the next hour, I also look forward to a good discussion because I would imagine we're going to have more than a few questions. I will point out that Rosanna and Jancy are participating. The third member, Randy Sullivan, doesn't come to church here, but he does come on Wednesday nights. So you could also ask them questions if you wanted to, as I put them on the spot, about what the ceremony means to them. Jancy's going to hate me for that, but maybe she'll go hide. Or she'll say, let Rosanna answer that. In any case, thank you all for coming out and hearing this talk and for being here with us, and I hope you'll stick around for the